The recent gun violence in Texas has given renewed urgency to calls for gun control by Democrats. But some conservatives believe this may be Democrats' first step in trying to confiscate firearms. One America's John Hines has the latest from Washington.
Former NRA President Dave Keene is speaking out, warning that if left unchecked, progressive Democrat candidates for president will not only pack the Supreme Court in order to eviscerate the Second Amendment, but will seek to confiscate firearms.
This year, for the first time, Democratic candidates are actually articulating what I think many of them have believed for a long time, and that is that firearms ought to be confiscated. The word for that these days is mandatory buyback. Buyback is a false term since the government didn't sell them to the citizens in the first place. And mandatory buyback means that you either turn your gun into the state or face criminal penalties for refusing to do so.
And Keene says that the Democratic presidential candidates are treating the Second Amendment the way their party has treated abortion rights and right to life over the last decade, namely that no one can compete in the party's progressive wing if they support firearms ownership.
Under any definition, that's confiscation. And that's where they're coming from, that's where they're going. That appeals to the progressive base of the Democratic Party. One wonders whether they realize that it doesn't appeal to the vast majority of Americans. Well, Mr. O'Rourke has been the most articulate, if you will. He's suggested that we ought to have mandatory buybacks, in other words, confiscation of particularly what so-called assault weapons, semi-automatic long arms.
And ownership of those long arms and pistols is under threat now more than ever, because the Democratic candidates for president are also committed to changing the nature of the Supreme Court, one way or another, says Keene, partly with an eye on the Second Amendment.
They not only propose what they call mandatory buybacks, but every one of the presidential wannabes appealing to progressives has endorsed packing the Supreme Court. That's proposed so that they can get rid of the Heller decision. And packing the Supreme Court is possible and indeed likely, given their endorsement of the idea, if they win the presidency and a majority in the United States Senate.
According to Keene, Second Amendment supporters have faced criticism over the years for arguing that proposals from gun control advocates will lead down a slippery slope, ending with confiscation. Keene believes it is increasingly obvious that the slope looms before us, and today's progressive Democrats are greasing it. John Hines, One America News, Washington.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.